September 19th, 1935. Harlem, New York, 8:15 p.m. A man in a navy blue suit stands at the entrance of the Cotton Club, the most famous nightclub in America. His shoes are polished to a mirror shine. His white shirt is crisp enough to cut glass. He looks like money. He looks like power. And that's exactly the problem. Because Ellsworth, Bumpy Johnson, isn't supposed to be here. Inside, Duke Ellington's orchestra is swinging. Cab Calloway is about to take the stage. White patrons in furs and diamonds are laughing, drinking, soaking up the best black talent Harlem has to offer. But outside, a doorman named Thomas Murphy steps in front of Bumpy and says the words that will change everything. "Get lost, boy. This ain't for you." The crowd waiting in line. They're watching. Some are smirking. Some are nodding in approval. This is how it's supposed to work. Black people can perform. Black people can serve. Black people can make white folks rich. But black people can't walk through the front door. Murphy doesn't know who Bumpy Johnson is. Doesn't know he's one of the most connected men in Harlem. Doesn't know he's got ties to everyone from street operators to ministers to businessmen who move in silence. Murphy just sees another black man who needs to be reminded of his place. And Bumpy? He doesn't shout, doesn't swing, doesn't give them the satisfaction. He smiles, holds the doorman's gaze just long enough to be remembered, then turns and walks away with the kind of calm that makes your spine tingle. Because that smile, that wasn't surrender. That was a promise. What happened next didn't make the front page right away. There were no riots, no headlines screaming about violence in the streets. But over the following weeks, something started to happen at the Cotton Club, something the owners couldn't explain and couldn't stop. Tables stayed empty, performers canceled, deliveries went missing, inspectors showed up at the worst possible times, and slowly, quietly, one of the most powerful symbols of segregation in America started to crack. This is the story of how one man turned a single moment of humiliation into a calculated campaign of economic warfare. How he built a coalition that blended the underworld with the church, the streets with the boardrooms. How he proved that segregation wasn't invincible, it was just expensive to challenge, until someone made it more expensive to maintain. Before we dive in, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and drop a like on this video. Stories like this don't get told enough, and your support makes sure we keep bringing them to light. This is the true story of the night Bumpy Johnson got turned away from the Cotton Club, and what he did about it. To understand what Bumpy Johnson was up against, you need to understand Harlem in 1935. This wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a universe unto itself, a place where black excellence lived, breathed, and thrived, despite a country that did everything it could to crush it. Harlem was jazz pouring out of basement clubs at 3 a.m. It was poets and painters and preachers all living on the same block. It was families who'd migrated north looking for freedom and found something more complicated: opportunity wrapped in barbed wire. By day, Harlem was bustling. Street vendors sold everything from sweet potato pies to handmade hats. Barbershops doubled as meeting halls. Churches weren't just places of worship, they were command centers for survival, organizing rent strikes, job networks, and community protection. You could walk down Lenox Avenue and hear 5 different languages, smell a dozen different kinds of cooking, and feel the hum of a people determined to build something that couldn't be taken away. By night, Harlem became the heartbeat of American culture. The Savoy Ballroom, Small's Paradise, the Apollo Theater. These were places where black folks could dress up, show out, and be treated like royalty, where you didn't have to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's idea of acceptable, where a working-class cook could dance next to a doctor, and nobody cared as long as you had rhythm and respect. But then there was the Cotton Club. Located on 142nd Street and Lenox Avenue, right in the heart of Harlem, the Cotton Club was a contradiction, wrapped in velvet and cruelty. It was owned by white mobsters, managed by white businessmen, filled every single night with white audiences who traveled uptown to watch black performers entertain them in a place black customers could never enter. Let that sink in for a second. The Cotton Club sat in a black neighborhood. It made millions off black talent. Duke Ellington became a household name because of his residency there. Cab Calloway, Lena Horne, Ethel Waters, legends were born on that stage. But if you were black and you wanted to sit down and enjoy the show, the door was closed. Literally, the club's policy was explicit. Whites only. Black people could work there as performers, waiters, cooks, cleaners, but they couldn't be patrons. They could generate the wealth, but they couldn't share in the dignity. And the white folks who packed the place every night, they loved it. They got to feel adventurous, like they were slumming it in exotic Harlem, while never actually having to sit next to a black person. They got the thrill without the equality, the culture without the respect. It was racism as entertainment, exploitation as business model. The Cotton Club wasn't an outlier, it was the blueprint. Across America, white-owned businesses were making fortunes off black creativity, while keeping black people locked out of the profits and the prestige. And they got away with it because they believed black communities didn't have the power to fight back. They believed wrong. Now let's talk about Bumpy Johnson. If Harlem was a chessboard, Bumpy was one of the players who understood every piece, every move, every angle. Born in South Carolina, raised in Harlem, Bumpy wasn't your typical street hustler. He was smart, scary smart, well-read, strategic. He moved through Harlem's underworld with the precision of a general and the patience of a man who knew that real power wasn't about being the loudest in the room. By 1935, Bumpy had connections everywhere. He knew the numbers runners and the policy bankers. He knew which cops could be bought and which couldn't. He knew the ministers who could move a congregation with a single sermon. He knew the union organizers who could shut down a business with a whisper. And he knew the businessmen, both legitimate and otherwise, who understood that money talks louder than any law. Bumpy wasn't just a gangster. He was a networker, a strategist, a man who understood that power in Harlem didn't come from a gun. It came from relationships, leverage, and knowing exactly when to apply pressure. He was also a man who understood disrespect, not the petty kind, not the kind you get into a fist fight over and forget by morning, the structural kind, the kind that tells you that no matter how much money you have, no matter how sharp you dress, no matter how much respect you command in your own community, you will never be equal. That's what the Cotton Club represented. It wasn't just a nightclub. It was a daily reminder that black people in Harlem could build culture, generate wealth, and create art that white America couldn't get enough of, but they would never be allowed to enjoy it on equal terms. And on the night of September 19th, 1935, Bumpy Johnson walked up to that door and got reminded of that fact in the most public, humiliating way possible. Quick question for you: where are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I love seeing where this community is tuning in from. Most men would have walked away angry. Some would have walked away defeated. Bumpy Johnson walked away with a plan. September 19th, 1935. Thursday evening. The air in Harlem is thick with late summer heat, the kind that makes your shirt stick to your back even after the sun goes down. Bumpy Johnson is walking toward the Cotton Club with a man named Jacob Weinstein. Weinstein is a Jewish businessman, legitimate, connected, the kind of guy who knows mayors and police captains and club owners. He's got pull, he's got influence, and he genuinely believes that if he vouches for Bumpy, if he walks him to the door personally, maybe, just maybe, they'll make an exception. Weinstein means well, but he doesn't understand what Bumpy already knows. The Cotton Club doesn't do exceptions. The cruelty is the point. They approach the entrance at 8:15 p.m. The club is already buzzing. You can hear the music thumping from inside, the laughter, the clink of glasses. A line of white patrons stretches down the block, men in tailored suits, women in gowns that cost more than most Harlem families make in a month. They're here for the show, here to see black folks perform so they can go home and tell their friends how cultured they are. Standing at the door is Thomas Murphy. Murphy is the kind of man who wears his authority like a badge. He's not big, but he's got that look, the look of someone who's been given a tiny bit of power and intends to use every ounce of it. He's a doorman, but in his mind, he's a gatekeeper, a enforcer of the natural order. Weinstein steps forward first, smiling, confident. "Evening, Tom. I've got a guest with me tonight. This is Mr. Johnson. He's with me." Murphy's eyes slide from Weinstein to Bumpy. There's no hesitation, no consideration, just a flat, cold assessment. "No." Weinstein blinks. "Excuse me?" I said no. Murphy's voice is louder now, making sure the people in line can hear. "Club policy. Whites only. Your friend here needs to move along." Weinstein tries again, his tone still friendly but with an edge. "Tom, I'm a regular here. I'm personally vouching for. I don't care if you're vouching for the Pope. Murphy cuts him off. He's not coming in. Now step aside before I call the cops and have him arrested for loitering. The word hangs in the air like a slap. Loitering. Bumpy Johnson, a man who commands respect from 125th Street to the Bronx, who's got more money in his pocket than Murphy will see in a year, is being threatened with arrest for standing on a public sidewalk. And the crowd? They're eating it up. Some of the white patrons are smirking. A couple of women whisper to each other, glancing at Bumpy like he's a stray dog that wandered into the wrong yard. One man actually chuckles, shaking his head like this is the most predictable thing he's seen all week. Murphy takes a step closer to Bumpy, close enough that Bumpy can smell the cheap cologne and stale cigarettes. His voice drops, but it's still loud enough for the crowd to hear. Get lost, boy. This ain't for you, boy. Not sir. Not Mr. Johnson. Not even just you, boy. It's not just an insult. It's a erasure. A reminder that no matter who Bumpy is in Harlem, no matter what he's built, no matter how much power he holds in this moment, at this door, he's nothing. Weinstein looks horrified. He starts to say something, but Bumpy raises a hand, stopping him, and then Bumpy does something that nobody expects. He smiles. Not a fake smile, not a nervous smile, a slow, deliberate smile that reaches his eyes and stays there. He looks at Murphy, really looks at him for 3, maybe 4 seconds, long enough that Murphy's smirk starts to falter. Long enough that the confidence in his posture wavers, just a fraction. Bumpy doesn't say a word. He adjusts his cuffs, smooths the front of his jacket. Then he turns, calm as Sunday morning, and walks away. No shouting, no threats, no scene. Weinstein hurries after him, stammering apologies, but Bumpy just waves him off. But it's not fine. And Bumpy Johnson doesn't forget. As he walks down Lenox Avenue, the sounds of the Cotton Club fading behind him, something is crystallizing in his mind. This wasn't personal. Murphy didn't know him. Didn't have a grudge. This was structural, systematic. This was how the game was designed. The Cotton Club existed because white folks believed black people had no leverage, no power to push back. They could humiliate, exclude, and exploit because they thought Harlem would just take it. They thought wrong. By the time Bumpy reaches 135th Street, he's already running through names in his head. People he needs to call, meetings he needs to set, pressure points he needs to map. Violence would have been easy, satisfying, even, but Bumpy Johnson isn't interested in easy. He's interested in making them pay. Bumpy Johnson walks. Not fast, not slow, just steady, deliberate, like a man who's got somewhere to be, and all the time in the world to get there. He passes 139th Street, then 137th. The sounds of Harlem at night wrap around him, laughter spilling out of apartment windows, a radio playing Billie Holiday, kids still out on stoops even though it's past their bedtime. This is his world. These are his people, and they just got disrespected. Again, he turns onto 133rd Street and finds himself standing in front of the Savoy Ballroom. The Savoy is everything the Cotton Club pretends to be but isn't. It's packed tonight, always is, but here, black folks aren't just the entertainment. They're the audience, the owners, the whole damn experience. Inside, couples are swing dancing like their lives depend on it. The energy is electric, joyful, free. No one's checking skin color at the door. No one's calling anybody. Boy, Bumpy stands there for a moment, watching through the windows, and something clicks. The Cotton Club survives because it's never been expensive to be racist. Think about it. The owners pay black performers less than they're worth. They pack the house every night with white customers who pay top dollar. They get all the profit, all the prestige, and none of the consequences. Discrimination isn't just their policy, it's their business model. And it works because they believe Harlem can't fight back. They believe black folks will just keep showing up to perform, keep serving drinks, keep making them rich. Because what's the alternative? Where else are people going to work during the Depression? They believe the community is too fractured, too desperate, too powerless to organize. They believe wrong. Bumpy starts walking again, faster now, his mind racing. What if we made it expensive? What if we turned every advantage they think they have into a vulnerability? The Cotton Club needs black performers. What happens if the performers stop showing up? The Cotton Club needs black staff. What happens if the waiters, the cooks, the cleaners, All walk out on the same night. The Cotton Club needs supplies, liquor, food, linens. What happens if those deliveries start getting delayed, damaged, or lost? The Cotton Club operates on the edge of the law: bootleg liquor, mob connections, cash under the table. What happens if inspectors start showing up? If the fire marshal suddenly gets concerned? If tax auditors start asking questions? And what happens if every other club in Harlem, the ones that actually respect black folks, suddenly gets access to the best talent, the best press, the best word of mouth? This isn't about burning the Cotton Club down. It's about making it bleed. Slowly, strategically, until the cost of keeping black people out becomes higher than the cost of letting them in. Bumpy stops walking. He's on 131st Street now, standing under a street lamp, and he's smiling again. But this time, it's different. This time, it's the smile of a man who's just figured out the answer to a problem everyone else thought was unsolvable. If you're loving this story so far, do me a solid, smash that like button. It helps us bring you more untold history like this. He checks his watch. 9:47 p.m. He's got calls to make. A lot of them. He needs the numbers, runners, the guys who control the underground lottery that half of Harlem plays. They've got reach. They've got loyalty. And they've got reasons to hate the white mob that's been trying to muscle in on their territory. He needs the union organizers, the ones who've been fighting for fair wages and decent treatment for black workers across the city. They know how to coordinate, how to strike, how to make noise. He needs the ministers, the ones whose congregations trust them more than they trust any politician or cop. They can move people. They can frame this as a moral fight, not just an economic one. He needs the legitimate businessmen, the ones who own the Savoy, Small's Paradise, the Apollo. They're competitors. They've got every reason to want the Cotton Club to fail. And he needs the underworld operators, the ones who can make things happen that nobody talks about in polite company. The ones who can make sure deliveries go missing, inspections happen at inconvenient times, and problems multiply faster than they can be solved. Separately, these groups don't trust each other. Some of them actively hate each other. But together, under the right leadership, with the right plan, they could take down an empire. Bumpy Johnson heads toward a payphone on the corner. It's time to make some calls. By midnight, Bumpy Johnson has made 11 phone calls. By 1 a.m., 7 men are sitting in the back room of a barbershop on 132nd Street. This isn't a typical meeting. These aren't typical allies. Sitting at the table is Raymond Ray Foster, a numbers banker who runs one of the most profitable policy operations in Harlem. Ray's got money, muscle, and a network that stretches from the Bronx to Brooklyn. He's also got a grudge against the white mobsters who've been trying to squeeze him out of business for the past 2 years. The same mobsters who own the Cotton Club. Next to him is Clarence Mills, a union organizer with the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. Clarence has spent the last decade fighting for black workers' rights, organizing strikes, negotiating with bosses who'd rather see him dead than see him win. He knows how to mobilize people. He knows how to shut things down. Across the table is Reverend Thomas Ashford from Abyssinian Baptist Church. Reverend Ashford is respected, connected, and not afraid to call out injustice from the pulpit. His congregation is 1,500 strong, and when he speaks, people listen. More importantly, when he asks them to act, they act. Then there's Leonard "Lenny" Price, owner of the Red Rooster, a supper club 3 blocks from the Cotton Club. Lenny's been watching white-owned clubs rake in money while his spot struggles to get mentioned in the papers. He's got talent connections, media contacts, and a bone-deep desire to see the Cotton Club fail. Sitting quietly in the corner is Marcus Webb, a lawyer, one of the few black attorneys in New York who's actually winning cases. Marcus knows the law inside and out, which means he also knows exactly where the Cotton Club is vulnerable. Tax codes, health regulations, liquor licenses, fire safety. He's got a mental list already forming. Next to Marcus is James "Jimmy" Caldwell, a former Cotton Club waiter who got fired last year for talking back to a manager. Jimmy knows the club's operations intimately. He knows the schedule, the suppliers, the staff, the weak points, and he's got friends still working there who are tired of being treated like dirt. And finally, there's Samuel Cross, a journalist for the Amsterdam News, Harlem's most widely read black newspaper. Samuel's been writing about segregation and injustice for years, but he's hungry for a story that actually makes a difference. A story with teeth. 7 men, 7 different worlds, And normally, they wouldn't be caught dead in the same room together. But tonight, they're all listening to Bumpy Johnson. Appreciate you all coming out on short notice. Bumpy starts, his voice calm, measured. I'm not going to waste your time with a long speech. You all know what happened tonight. You all know what the Cotton Club represents. And you all know that nothing's going to change unless we make it change. Reverend Ashford nods slowly. I'm listening. The Cotton Club survives because it's profitable, Bumpy continues. They make money hand over fist while spitting in our faces. But profit has a flip side vulnerability. They need performers. They need staff. They need supplies. They need to operate without scrutiny. Take any one of those away, and they're hurt. Take all of them away, and they're finished. Ray Foster leans back in his chair, arms crossed. You talking about a boycott? I'm talking about a campaign, Bumpy says. Organized, sustained, multi-pronged. We hit them from every angle until they either change or collapse. Clarence Mills raises an eyebrow. You want to unionize Cotton Club workers? I want to make it impossible for them to operate the way they've been operating. Bumpy replies. That means labor pressure, yes, but it also means supply chain disruptions, regulatory scrutiny, competition, media exposure. We make them bleed from a dozen different cuts until they can't stop the bleeding. Lenny Price grins. I like the sound of that. Marcus Webb, the lawyer, speaks up. You're talking about economic warfare. That's not illegal, but it's risky. If they figure out it's coordinated, they'll come after all of us. They won't figure it out, Bumpy says. Not if we're smart. Every action looks independent. A performer cancels because of a scheduling conflict. A delivery gets delayed because of a mix-up. An inspector shows up because of an anonymous tip. Nobody connects the dots until it's too late. What time is it where you are right now? Drop it in the comments. I'm curious how late you're staying up for this story. Samuel Cross, the journalist, taps his pen against his notepad. And what's my role in this? You tell the story, Bumpy says. Not the whole story, not yet. But you write about the Cotton Club's hypocrisy. You highlight the black-owned clubs that treat people with dignity. You make sure Harlem knows where their money should be going. You shape the narrative. Samuel nods slowly. I can do that. Jimmy Caldwell, the former waiter, leans forward. I've still got friends on the inside. Cooks, cleaners, waiters, they're all tired of the disrespect. If we give them cover, they'll walk. But they need to know they won't be alone. They need to know there's support. There will be, Reverend Ashford says firmly. My church can provide financial assistance to anyone who loses their job standing up to that place. We'll make sure no one starves for doing the right thing. Clarence Mills nods. And I can connect them with other jobs. The Brotherhood's got contacts all over the city. We'll make sure people land on their feet. Ray Foster uncrosses his arms. And what about the supply side? You want deliveries disrupted? Bumpy meets his eyes. I want the Cotton Club to feel like everything's falling apart at once. Liquor shipments delayed. Linens lost. Food orders wrong. Nothing catastrophic, just constant, annoying problems that cost them time and money. Ray smiles. I know people who can make that happen. Marcus Webb speaks again. And I'll start digging into their paperwork. Liquor licenses, health permits, tax filings. I guarantee they're cutting corners somewhere. When I find it, I'll make sure the right people start asking questions. Lenny Price slaps the table. And I'll make sure every top-tier performer in Harlem knows they've got a better option. Better pay, better treatment, better respect. Let's see how the Cotton Club does when they're stuck with second-rate talent. Bumpy looks around the table. 7 men who walked in as strangers are now nodding, planning, committing. This isn't about revenge, Bumpy says quietly. This is about power. They've had it for too long, and they've used it to humiliate us. We're going to show them that power doesn't come from a door policy. It comes from the people they've been stepping on. Reverend Ashford stands. When do we start? Bumpy Johnson smiles. We already have. The first strike happens on Saturday night, September 21st, just 2 days after Bumpy got turned away at the door. The Cotton Club is expecting a packed house. Reservations are full. The kitchen is prepped. Duke Ellington's orchestra is scheduled to perform at 10 p.m. Everything is running like clockwork. Until it isn't. At 7:30 p.m., 3 waiters don't show up for their shift. No call, no explanation, just gone. At 8 p.m., 2 more call in sick. By 8:30 p.m., the club is short-staffed and scrambling. Tables aren't getting cleared. Drinks are taking twice as long to arrive. Customers are annoyed. Management is furious. Then, at 9:45 p.m., 15 minutes before showtime, Duke Ellington's lead trumpet player, a man named William Billy Hayes, walks into the manager's office and quits. On the spot. No notice. No negotiation. "I got a better offer," Billy says simply, and walks out. The manager is stunned. Better offer? From who? Billy doesn't answer. He's already halfway out the door, heading to the Red Rooster, where Lenny Price just offered him 20% more money and the respect of performing for an audience that actually wants him there. The show goes on, but it's sloppy. The replacement trumpet player doesn't know half the arrangements. The rhythm is off, the energy is flat, and the white customers who paid top dollar to see authentic Harlem jazz leave disappointed, muttering about how the club isn't what it used to be. It's a small crack. But it's a crack, and Bumpy Johnson is just getting started. Over the next 2 weeks, the problems multiply. On Monday, the Cotton Club's liquor delivery is 3 hours late. The shipment finally arrives, but half the bottles are the wrong brand. The manager spends the entire evening apologizing to customers and scrambling to find substitutes. On Wednesday, the club's linen service delivers tablecloths that are stained and napkins that smell like mildew. When the manager calls to complain, he's told it's a mix-up and they'll fix it next week. They don't. On Friday, a health inspector shows up unannounced. He finds violations, minor ones, but violations nonetheless. A cooler that's 2 degrees too warm. A storage area that's not up to code. The club gets fined and has to shut down the kitchen for 4 hours to make corrections. The manager is losing his mind. What the hell is going on? He shouts at his staff. How does everything go wrong at once? Nobody has an answer, because nobody realizes it's coordinated. Meanwhile, across Harlem, a different story is being told. Reverend Ashford stands in the pulpit at Abyssinian Baptist Church on Sunday morning, his voice booming across the congregation. "There are places in this neighborhood," he says, "that want our talent but not our presence, that want our labor but not our dignity, that want our culture but not our equality. I'm here to tell you we don't have to accept that. We have options, we have power, and we have a responsibility to support the businesses that support us." The congregation erupts in applause. After the service, people are talking. Where should we go instead? What clubs actually treat us right? The answer spreads like wildfire. The Savoy, the Red Rooster, Small's Paradise, the Apollo. By the following weekend, those clubs are packed. Lines stretch around the block. The energy is electric. And the performers? They're getting better pay, better treatment, and performing for audiences who actually respect them. The Cotton Club, meanwhile, is starting to see empty tables. Not a lot, not yet, but enough to notice. Samuel Cross, the journalist, is doing his part too. In the Amsterdam News, he writes a piece titled, "Where Harlem's Money Should Go." It's not a hit piece on the Cotton Club, not directly. It's a celebration of black-owned venues. He profiles Lenny Price and the Red Rooster. He interviews performers who've left the Cotton Club for better opportunities. He writes about the Savoy's integrated dance floor and the respect that comes with it. The message is subtle but clear. Why give your money to a place that doesn't want you? The article gets passed around. Barbershops, beauty salons, church basements. People start talking, and talking turns into action. Back at the Cotton Club, the pressure is mounting. Another performer cancels. This time it's a singer who's been with the club for 3 years. "Family emergency," she says. But 2 days later, she's headlining at Small's Paradise. The club's head cook quits, then 2 dishwashers, then a bartender. The manager tries to hire replacements, but word has spread. Nobody wants to work there. The pay isn't worth the disrespect. And besides, there are other options now, options that treat you like a human being. Deliveries keep getting delayed. Inspections keep happening at the worst times. The fire marshal shows up and finds an exit that's partially blocked. Another fine. Another headache. And then, on October 10th, 3 weeks after Bumpy got turned away, the Cotton Club's liquor license gets flagged for review. Marcus Webb, the lawyer, has been digging. And he found something. The club's license application has discrepancies. Signatures that don't match. addresses that don't line up. It's not enough to shut them down, but it's enough to trigger an investigation. The investigation takes time, and time costs money. The owners of the Cotton Club are starting to panic. They call meetings. They try to figure out what's happening. Is it bad luck? Is it sabotage? Is someone targeting them? They can't prove anything. Every incident, taken individually, looks like a coincidence, a scheduling conflict, a supplier error, a routine inspection. But together, it's a pattern. And it's bleeding them dry. Revenue is down 15%. Staff turnover is at an all-time high. The club's reputation is taking hits in the press, not from direct attacks, but from the growing buzz around competitors. One of the owners, a man named Herman Stark, sits in his office and stares at the numbers. "We're losing money," he mutters. "We're losing staff. We're losing customers. What the hell is going on?" His partner, Auni Madden, a notorious mobster, leans back in his chair and lights a cigar. "Someone's playing games with us." "Who?" Madden shrugs. "Could be anyone. Could be the unions. Could be a competitor. Could be someone with a grudge. What do we do?" Madden blows out a cloud of smoke. "We find out who's behind it, and we make them stop. But that's the problem. There's no single person to target, no clear enemy to threaten. The campaign is too diffuse, too decentralized. Every piece looks independent, and by the time they figure it out, it might be too late." Meanwhile, Bumpy Johnson is watching from a distance. He's not in the spotlight. He's not making speeches or writing articles. He's just coordinating, checking in with Ray Foster to make sure supply disruptions stay consistent, talking to Clarence Mills to ensure workers who walk out have support, meeting with Reverend Ashford to keep the community mobilized. It's like conducting an orchestra. Every instrument plays its part, and together, they're creating something powerful. One night, Bumpy sits in a booth at the Red Rooster, watching the crowd. The place is packed. The music is incredible. People are laughing, dancing, living. This is what the Cotton Club could never understand. You can't build something real on disrespect. You can't sustain power by stepping on people. Eventually, the bill comes due, and for the Cotton Club, that bill is getting bigger every single day. Lenny Price slides into the booth across from Bumpy, grinning. "We're killing it. Best month we've ever had." Bumpy nods. "Good. Keep it going." "You think they'll fold?" Bumpy takes a sip of his drink. "They'll fold, or they'll change. Either way, we win." Lenny raises his glass. "To making them pay." Bumpy clinks his glass against Lenny's. "To making them pay." By late October, the Cotton Club is in crisis mode. The owners aren't just worried anymore, they're desperate. Revenue is down 23% compared to the same period last year. They've had to cancel 2 major shows because performers backed out at the last minute. The staff situation is so bad they're hiring people off the street just to keep the doors open. And the worst part? They still can't figure out who's behind it. Herman Stark is convinced it's the unions. "It's got to be," he insists during a tense meeting in his office. "They've been trying to organize our workers for years. This is their move." Auni Madden isn't so sure. If it was the unions, they'd be making demands. They'd be public about it. This is something else. This is surgical. Then who? Madden doesn't have an answer. And that terrifies him more than any enemy he can see. They try to fight back. They offer higher wages to lure workers back. They threaten suppliers who've been unreliable. They even try to bribe a health inspector to back off. Nothing works. The higher wages don't matter when workers know they'll still be treated like garbage. The suppliers shrug and blame logistical issues they can't control. And the health inspector? He takes the bribe and then gets replaced by another inspector who's even more thorough. It's like fighting smoke. Every time they think they've got a handle on the problem, it slips through their fingers. Meanwhile, the pressure from the community is intensifying. Reverend Ashford isn't the only one preaching now. Ministers across Harlem are picking up the message, weaving it into their sermons. Support your own, they say. Spend your money where you're respected. The Amsterdam News runs another piece by Samuel Cross. This one more pointed. The headline reads, "The Cotton Club's Slow Decline and Why Harlem Isn't Mourning." The article doesn't accuse anyone of sabotage. It doesn't have to. It simply lays out the facts. Performers are leaving, customers are choosing other venues, and the Cotton Club's reputation is crumbling. Cross frames it as a natural consequence of disrespect. When you build your business on exclusion, he writes, Don't be surprised when the excluded find ways to exclude you back. The article gets reprinted in black newspapers across the country. Suddenly, the Cotton Club isn't just Harlem's problem. It's a national symbol of everything wrong with segregation in America. White liberals start to take notice. Some of them, the ones who genuinely care about equality, stop going to the Cotton Club. They don't want to be associated with a place that's becoming synonymous with racism. Others double down, insisting the club has a right to serve whoever it wants. But even they can't ignore the fact that the experience isn't what it used to be. The talent is weaker, the service is slower, the magic is gone. Inside the Cotton Club, morale is collapsing. The remaining staff are overworked and underpaid. They're covering for the people who quit, doing twice the work for the same money. Resentment is building. Mistakes are piling up. One night, a waiter accidentally spills a drink on a customer, a wealthy banker from Connecticut. The customer explodes, demanding to speak to the manager. The waiter, exhausted and fed up, snaps back. You want better service? Maybe you should go somewhere that actually values its workers. He's fired on the spot, but the damage is done. The customer leaves a scathing review in a society column, calling the Cotton Club a shadow of its former self. More bad press, more empty tables. Madden finally decides to take matters into his own hands. He's a mobster. He's used to solving problems with intimidation and violence, so he starts asking around, leaning on people, trying to figure out who's orchestrating the campaign. He leans on union organizers. They shrug. We've got nothing to do with it. He leans on rival club owners. They laugh. Why would we need to sabotage you? You're doing a fine job of that yourself. He even tries to lean on some of the performers who left. But they're protected now by Lenny Price, by Reverend Ashford, by a community that's rallied around them. Madden's threats don't carry the weight they used to. And then, one night, he gets a message. It's delivered by a kid maybe 12 years old who walks up to him outside the club and hands him a folded piece of paper. By the time Madden looks up, the kid is gone. He unfolds the paper. There's no signature, just a single sentence, written in neat handwriting. You can't fight what you can't see. Madden crumples the paper in his fist, his jaw tight. He knows what this is. It's a message, a warning. Someone is telling him that they're in control, and there's nothing he can do about it. For the first time in his life, Madden feels powerless. Back in Harlem, the coalition is holding steady. There are moments of doubt, moments when people wonder if it's worth it, if they're risking too much. But every time someone wavers, Bumpy is there to remind them why they started. This isn't just about the Cotton Club, he tells them. This is about proving that we don't have to accept disrespect, that we've got power when we work together, that they need us more than we need them. And it's working. The Cotton Club is bleeding. Slowly, steadily, inevitably, and everyone in Harlem can see it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss stories like this. We're just getting to the best part. The question now isn't whether the Cotton Club will survive. It's whether they'll change before it's too late. November 12th, 1935. 6 weeks after Bumpy Johnson was turned away at the door, Herman Stark sits across from Madden in the back office of the Cotton Club, and for the first time, they're talking about the unthinkable. We need to change the policy, Stark says quietly. Madden's jaw tightens. Absolutely not. We're dying. We've lost 30% of our revenue. Half our staff is gone. We can't book top talent anymore. The press is killing us. How much longer do you think we can hold out? We hold out as long as it takes, Madden snaps. We don't negotiate with who? Stark interrupts. We don't even know who we're fighting. There's no one to negotiate with. There's no one to threaten. It's just happening. And if we don't do something, we're going to lose everything. Madden leans back in his chair, silent. He knows Stark is right, but admitting it feels like surrender. If we change the policy, Stark continues, we stop the bleeding. We get the performers back. We get the staff back. We get the community back. And maybe we survive this. Madden stares at him for a long moment. Then he stands, walks to the window, and looks out at Lenox Avenue. Harlem is buzzing with life. Music pouring out of clubs. People laughing, dancing, living. And the Cotton Club, once the crown jewel of this neighborhood, is dying. Fine, Madden says finally. his voice flat. Change the policy. The announcement comes on November 18th, 1935. The Cotton Club releases a statement to the press. Effective immediately, the club will begin admitting black patrons. It's buried in careful language. They don't apologize. They don't admit wrongdoing. They frame it as evolving with the times and embracing the community that has made us successful. But everyone knows what it really is. It's surrender. The reaction in Harlem is mixed. Some people celebrate. We won, they say. We forced them to change. Others are skeptical. Too little, too late, they mutter. They only changed because we hurt their wallets. That's not respect, that's survival. Reverend Ashford addresses his congregation the following Sunday. Change that comes from pressure is still change, he says. But let's not forget why the pressure was necessary. Let's not forget who stood with us and who stood against us. And let's not forget that we have power, real power, when we stand together. The congregation rises to its feet, applauding. Bumpy Johnson hears the news while sitting in the back room of the same barbershop where this all started. Ray Foster is there. So is Clarence Mills, Lenny Price, Marcus Webb, Jimmy Caldwell, Samuel Cross, the coalition that made it happen. They folded, Ray says, grinning. We actually did it. Bumpy nods slowly, but he doesn't smile. Not yet. They changed the policy, he says. But let's see if they mean it. Let's see if they actually treat people with respect, or if this is just for show. And if it's just for show? Lenny asks. Bumpy meets his eyes. Then we finish what we started. 2 weeks later, Bumpy Johnson walks up to the Cotton Club again. It's a Thursday night. Almost exactly 2 months since he was turned away. This time, there's no Jacob Weinstein, no intermediary, just Bumpy, dressed in the same navy blue suit, the same polished shoes, the same crisp white shirt. He approaches the door. A different doorman is working tonight, younger, nervous. The guy recognizes Bumpy. Everyone in Harlem knows who he is by now. Good evening, sir, the doorman says, stepping aside. Welcome to the Cotton Club. Bumpy pauses, looks at the doorman, looks at the entrance, looks at the people waiting in line, some white, some black, all watching to see what he'll do. Then he smiles. Not the cold, calculated smile from before. A real one. Appreciate it, Bumpy says. But I've got other plans tonight. He turns and walks away, heading toward the Savoy Ballroom, where the music is better, the people are freer, and respect isn't something you have to fight for. What's the weather like where you are today? Sunny? Rainy? Cold? Drop it in the comments, I'm curious. The Cotton Club changed its policy, but Bumpy Johnson changed something bigger. He changed what was possible. So what did Bumpy Johnson actually accomplish? On the surface, he forced one nightclub to change its racist door policy. That's significant, sure. But the real impact goes so much deeper than that. What Bumpy proved, what that entire coalition proved, is that segregation wasn't invincible. It wasn't some natural law written in stone. It was a business decision. And like any business decision, it could be changed when the cost became too high. For decades, white-owned businesses across America operated on a simple calculation. Discrimination was profitable. You could exploit black labor, extract wealth from black culture, and exclude black customers, all without consequences. The system worked because black communities were seen as powerless, fractured, too desperate to fight back. Bumpy Johnson shattered that assumption. He showed that when you organize, when you coordinate labor, capital, media, and community pressure, you can make discrimination expensive. So expensive that even the most stubborn, racist business owners have to reconsider. And he did it without a single act of violence. Think about that for a second. No riots, no bombings, no shootouts. Just strategic, sustained economic pressure. It was warfare, but it was fought with boycotts, walkouts, supply disruptions, and media campaigns. This wasn't just a street hustler throwing his weight around. This was sophisticated, disciplined organizing that blended the underworld with the church, the unions with the entrepreneurs, the legal system with the court of public opinion. It was a blueprint, and that blueprint didn't die with the Cotton Club campaign. 10 years later, in the 1,940 labor organizer A, Philip Randolph, would threaten a massive march on Washington to protest discrimination in defense industries. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, facing the prospect of economic and political disruption, issued an executive order banning discrimination in defense contracts. Economic pressure, organized threat, policy change. Sound familiar? In the 1,950 seconds and 60 seconds, the civil rights movement would use boycotts as one of its most powerful weapons. The Montgomery bus boycott, the Birmingham campaign, the boycotts of segregated lunch counters in stores. Same playbook, same principle. Make discrimination too expensive to maintain. Bumpy Johnson didn't invent economic resistance. Black communities had been using it for generations. But what he did in 1935 was prove that it could work against one of the most powerful, well-connected institutions in America. He proved that you didn't need the law on your side to win. You didn't need white allies to validate your struggle. You needed organization, discipline, and the willingness to make your oppressors feel the cost of their choices. Now, let's be clear about something. Bumpy Johnson wasn't a saint. He was a criminal. He ran numbers. He was involved in activities that hurt people in his own community. His legacy is complicated, and we shouldn't romanticize it. But here's the thing about power. It doesn't care about your moral purity. It cares about leverage. And in 1935, Bumpy Johnson had leverage that ministers, activists, and politicians didn't. He had connections in the underworld that could disrupt supply chains. He had relationships with workers who were invisible to white owners, but essential to their operations. He had the respect of people who didn't trust the system because the system had never protected them. And he used that leverage, not for personal gain, but to strike a blow against institutional racism. That's what makes this story so powerful. It shows that resistance doesn't always come from the places we expect. Sometimes it comes from the margins, from the people the system tried to erase, from the ones who were never supposed to have power in the first place. The Cotton Club itself? It never fully recovered. The policy change came too late. The damage to its reputation was done. Black performers who'd found better opportunities elsewhere didn't come back. Black audiences who'd been excluded for years didn't forget. And white customers who'd come for the exotic experience of watching black talent in a segregated space. That thrill was gone. By 1940, the Cotton Club had moved downtown, trying to reinvent itself, but it was never the same. The magic, if you can call it that, was gone. Meanwhile, the clubs that had treated people with dignity from the start, the Savoy, the Apollo, Small's Paradise, thrived. They became the heartbeat of Harlem's cultural renaissance. They're the ones we remember today. Because respect isn't just the right thing to do. It's good business. So here's what you need to take away from this story. Power isn't permanent. Systems that seem unshakable can crack when enough pressure is applied in the right places. Organization matters. Individual acts of resistance are important, but coordinated, strategic campaigns, change structures, and dignity isn't something you beg for. It's something you demand and back up with action. Bumpy Johnson walked away from the Cotton Club that night in September 1935 with a smile on his face. Not because he was defeated, but because he knew something the Doorman didn't. He knew that the people they'd been stepping on had power, real power, the kind that doesn't come from a gun or a badge or a door policy, the kind that comes from solidarity, strategy, and the refusal to accept disrespect as the price of survival. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell us in the comments, what other untold stories should we cover next? We're always looking for the history that doesn't make it into the textbooks. This is the story of how one man turned humiliation into a movement, and how a community proved that segregation was never as strong as it pretended to be. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.